My name is John Gage, born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, 1929. And they call that the Great Depression. I don't know how they get the word great out of that because it wasn't great at all. I didn't starve to death. In fact, I come from a basically big family. My mother had two other boys, and I was born with a twin sister. And we got fed just as good as anybody back in the late 20s, early 30s. Back then, nobody was rich or poor. I mean, there was no middle class people. It was all rich or poor, because everybody was on either food stamps or relief or rich. And we were the ones that were on relief, because my mother got divorced early in life, and she was raised us kids as a single mother. She did a great job. She's the one that gets all the credit. I was just a snot-nosed kid growing up. And this is all coming through the generosity and the courtesy of the Lakeside Manor. This is in Reno, Nevada, where I live now. I've only been here about 3 months, and I'm getting pretty used to it, and I like the place, and what holds all the way down the future, I don't know. We're going to play this. My whole life has been played week by week, whatever. Because as most of you know, I come from the old soldiers' home in Washington, D.C., and I did not like that place. I did not like Washington, D.C. It was too institutionalized. And if you like to excuse me sometimes with my English, because I got a sort of a Chicago slang and a New York slang and Navy slang, and I worked at a courthouse, a jail for 15 years, so everything's thrown in together. So if it comes out a little slurry or blurry, that's your problem, not mine. Okay, we'll go back to 1929 when I was born. We had a big family. My mother had five brothers and one sister. And there was a set of twins, and I had a twin uncle and a twin aunt. There was twins in our family. Like I said, I got a twin sister. Her middle name was Patricia. My middle name is Patrick. Born March 16th, one day before St. Patrick's Day. My mother had a sense of humor. So she named me Patrick and her Patricia. And I was born at the Cook County Hospital. We went to various different schools, and because like I said, we were on relief and either couldn't pay the rent or wouldn't pay the rent, so we moved on, and everything basically turned out pretty good. One of the first Christmases I remember was back in about 1936 or 37. That's when they first come out with Tinker toys, and I thought those were the greatest thing ever. Well, my heart was all set on a Tinker toy set, but alas, back in the 30s, my mother was a waitress, and I didn't get my Tinker toy set that Christmas. What I got was a wound-up choo-choo train, not electric train. You had to wind it up. That wasn't the most modern thing in the world then, but it was okay. I was used to that. It was better than usual. The usual presents I got was a pair of pajamas or a shirt with the tie attached to it. And like I said, everything went good. And I'm thinking about in the late 30s, when just late 30s things start to get a little better. And this was in the early 40s. That's when the World War II just started, and the country started coming out of the Depression. My mother married another man by the name of Bob Smith. He was a great gentleman, and they bought a home in Chicago. I thought that was the greatest thing that happened since Santa Claus, to have our own home. It was at 21st and Washington. It was a great little neighborhood, and that's where I went to start going to high school. I went to Harrison High in Chicago, Illinois, and I had what they call a technical course. The girls took a commercial course, and the boys took a technical course. Right after that was during the war, and I just couldn't. I was not a good student. My mind was in the Wild Blue Yonder, because I wanted to be all in the service with my two brothers. My brother Bunny and my brother Chubby both went into the service. This was in the 42, 43, and I wanted to go to the service, but I wasn't old enough, so I just had to wait. In fact, when Pearl Harbor was bombed, my brother Bunny was in the Army. This was 1941. He was in the Army. He was home on leave, and that's the last time I seen him for 5 years. He didn't come home until 1945. He spent the whole time in the service. And my brother Chubby, he went to the Philippines, and he was in the Army about 6 months or 2 months, and he got wounded and he got discharged from the Army. So that's the way life goes. One guy spends 5 years over there, and one guy spends 2 months and he gets hit. But they're both safe. One has passed away. My brother Chubby, he's closing on 90 years old, and he's doing pretty good. He's in a wheelchair, but he's breathing and has a beer once in a while. That's all a man can expect when he's 90 years old. And right after that, on the day I turned 17, I joined the Navy. In fact, I was knocking on the door at 7 o'clock in the morning. I wanted to join the Navy. I was looking through the window, and the recruiter looked at me and says, 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock. So I waited an hour, and that's how I joined the Navy. March of 1946, day I was 17. And I went to boot camp in San Diego, California. In fact, my first 9 months in the Navy was spent on a train. I went from Chicago to San Diego for boot camp. I went from San Diego back to Chicago on boot leave. From Chicago back to San Diego to get my orders. And alas, what do I get? Orders to New York. I was going to catch a ship in New York. We spent six weeks on a troop train. Now that's really living on a troop train. I caught what they called, it was the Mount Olympus. It was a it was an amphibian flagship. And we were going to put it out of commission, and Admiral Byrd, Richard E. Byrd, they was going to make a cruise down to the South Pole for an expedition, and he decided he wanted that ship to be his flagship. So alas, I'm 17 years old. I'm the 1st of December of that year, 1946. I've only been in the Navy 9 months, and I'm on my way to the South Pole. You figure out the mathematics of that. That's 17 years and a half, and I'm on my way to the South Pole. Oh boy, that was an exciting trip though. They had these, that's the first time I ever saw a live penguin, and they had what they call the king penguins. They're the big guys, about 3-4 feet tall, and they're mean little guys, because we used to play on the ice with them or chase them, and they chased us. And this operation was called Operation High Jump. The reason why it was called Operation High Jump, it was the ice barrier in the South Pole was about 4 or 5 stories high, and right in going in was a harbor that you sort of go in slowly, and we could climb up the ice barrier, and that's why they call it the ice barrier, or Operation High Jump. And that's the first time we went to the South Pole, and they took us I was a deckhand in the Navy, and they took us and we dug a hole about 4 feet deep through the snow, and we found a Hershey bar about 6 feet long and about 2 feet wide. That was the reason for going down there. The Navy and the government want to test equipment and personnel, and we found this Hershey bar. So the guy who was in charge of the Hershey party, the working party, that's the Navy calls that a working party. And I don't know how they get these words party, and it's called a working party or an ammunition party or anything that has to do with men working in a group. It's called a party. Well, we lived with that, and by the way, we all, between about 20 of us, we ate that whole Hershey bar. It took 20 of us to eat it. And I'll never forget that cruise as long as I live. And after that, I got transferred from the Mount Olympus to the Charles R. Ware. That was the destroyer. And the objects of destroyers during the late 40s and early 50s was to show the American flag in Europe. And for us sailors, to spend money buying souvenirs and drinking and eating over there and sort of expand the American prosperity to the European population. After I went on a Charles R. Ware, that was a destroyer. I spent 8 years on that one ship. That's like anybody spending 40 years on a job. 8 years on one ship is a long time. But I was making Mediterranean cruises. I was a young man. I was traveling. I met a lot of people. I loved it. I was born for the Navy. And after the destroyer, I went on an aircraft carrier and a couple of other different repair ships. So I had a full Navy career. I retired as a chief shipfitter. I was a chief petty officer. That's as high as an enlisted man could go, and I was proud of that. I still am proud of that. And I get a pretty fair, decent pension from the Navy, and it goes up 3% every year, like Social Security. I can live with that. After I got discharged out of the Navy in 1966, and I decided to live in Chicago. That was a mistake. I lived there for about 15 years after I got out of the Navy. I was a dock hand. I'm a retired Teamster, and that's another little pension I got. And I'm not ashamed of that one either. And after I left, me and the wife decided we did not like the snow anymore. So I decided we'll move to Las Vegas, Nevada. And please, I've been asked a dozen times why we moved to Las Vegas, Nevada, and I have no answer. Because I was a married man with 3 kids, still in high school and grammar school, and I had 7 years to retire, and I upped and left. So I went to Las Vegas, and I ended up getting a job with the old Clark County Jail. And that was a great job, and I also worked for them for 15 years. There's another pension. And I laugh at all this stuff because a lot of people told me, you can't draw 4 pensions, that's not legal. Well, you tell that to the federal government and to my tax people. I get 4 pensions. Navy, County, Teamsters, Social Security. Did I forget one? Whatever. I know there's 4. And when I was at the Clark County Jail, with my experience with the Navy, I was a qualified firefighter, and I was in damage control. In 1981, the MGM fire comes along in Las Vegas, and they go, the county facilities, the people in charge got looking through the records. They needed somebody to pass the buck on for fire drills. So, alas, I was a retired shipbuilder. They made me the fire marshal of the Clark County Jail. And I think I was I'm not even going to say the word. In fact, I made the evacuation plan for the Clark County Jail. And I did it the same way you abandon ship. That's how you abandon a building. And I wrote this up for the Clark County Jail, and everybody thought it was great. The fire department thought it was great, and they thought it was great. So I left it like that, and everything turned out great. Now I live at the Lakeside Manor, and I thank these people for this opportunity to babble everything. Okay?